welcome to Legacy IAS. In today's current affair live, like I mentioned, current affair live, we will be discussing the July month current affair compilation, which will be necessary for your UPSC preparation, prelims, mains, interview. Okay? This is brought to you by your faculty, Sushma KP. Okay? So, in today's topic, okay, that is in today's live, what and all we will be discussing, we will be seeing into the international relations. We will be starting with UNODC releases World Drug Report of 2024. Then we will be discussing about your US Congress passes Resolve Tibet Act. Then we will be discussing about the first coal shipment from Russia to India in the very first INSTC. Then we will be discussing the importance of both Quad as well as your BRICS. And then we will be seeing what is Hannibal Directive. Okay. Then we will go ahead with Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Then we will speak about your Global India Summit. Then about Quad Ministerial Meeting. India's manufacturing opportunity in China +1. Then we will speak about your United Nations High Seas Treaty. Okay. Now before beginning only, I'll tell you, let's not make it monotonous, one-sided. Both of us will have equal communication. Okay. If at all you have any doubts, you can post it in the comment section. I will address it. Let's get started. The very first thing we will be discussing, the topic is UNODC releases World Drug Report of 2024. So, for very first thing you have to know, this will be especially useful in your prelims, is organization and the report they release. Not every organization you have to know, okay? Not every organization you have to know, but at least certain major ones, okay? One such is your UNODC and your World Drug Report of 2024. In this topic we will see, why we are discussing this topic, what is their relevance, okay, and what are the key contents of the report. Alright. We are discussing this topic is because, again, as we discussed in the news itself, UNODC released its World Drug Report in 2024. The reason this is very important is because there are escalating concerns of international drug landscape drawing global attention on the issue. Okay, where is it relevant? In your GS2 international relations. Alongside, you can also add health. Now, what will we be discussing in this article? What are the highlights of the report? Major drug producing regions in the world. Then we will be speaking about the factors which are contributing to the drug abuse in India, which states are having a higher cases, let's say a higher FIRs lodged. What is the controlling body, okay, with respect to drug menace. Then we will be speaking about the various challenges of, okay, drug trafficking in India. Next. When we look at the global drug usage, in 2022 alone, 292 million were listed as, when I say listed as, one point or the other in their lifetime, they have used drug. So, drug usage has been done, okay. In 2022, whooping 292 million people have used drugs. The common or the most popular form of drugs is your cannabis or what you call as marijuana. This marijuana is a dried plant. Okay. Now in this dried plant, you tend to use all the aspects of the plant such as seeds, leaves. The highest usage of drugs, okay, has been 292 million, means among that the highest usage of the drug category was your cannabis or marijuana, which accounted to 228 million users. Among the 229 million users, 228 were cannabis users. The others were opioids, amphetamines, cocaine and ecstasy. These are all the type of drugs. This is how the scenario was up until now. But what happened was, alongside this, something called as synthetic drugs started coming into picture, which means something that is produced artificially. Thus the name synthetic drugs. Produced artificially or in labs or not natural occurring. Another thing that is found out with respect to your synthetic drugs is, it has been reported that in many of the high income countries, a lot of drug overdose death has happened. One of the main culprits for that is your synthetic opioids, which is making a round turn, okay, from your high income countries. This is now, prevalence is very high in your high income group countries only. Slowly it is now going to the escalation. It is coming into your mid income group countries, yet not reached your LIG countries. Now when I say not reached, I am not telling it has not gone there at all. The prevalence of usage of synthetic opioids is less in your mid income and low income group countries compared to your high income group countries. Now when we also discuss on this drug issues, overdose, the main terminology that's coming is your treatment gap. That is, for people who are addicted to drugs, the treatment that you will give to overcome, okay, that has a difference. What do I mean? 18 women, if they are undergoing or they are abusing drugs, that is overusing drugs, or they have been using drugs, among the 18 only one receives treatment. Whereas sharp contrast to the men is, among 7 men, one receives treatment. So there is wide gap in the treatment. Drug abuse is there. To prevent that treatment, okay, there is a huge gap. Common examples of your synthetic opioids are fentanyl, formidable painkillers, okay. So there is overuse and abuse of your painkillers. Methadone, okay. Then tramadol, carfentanil. Now this last one, carfentanil, is a very ultra potent drug, which means any usage of that drug in a quantity more than prescribed, even in small doses, will be highly lethal and might lead to death. Which Indian states are very highly affected by this drug menace? Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Punjab. Now when I tell, it's not just these 3 states are affected, but in these 3 states, last 3 years highest FIRs regarding overuse of drugs or usage of drugs was lodged in these states. Now, do we have an act which controls the movement of drugs or people's usage of drugs? That is Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of, okay, that is your NDPS. So if a complaint is to be raised, if an FIR is to be filed, it is under this particular act it will come under. If you see the drug producing regions in the world where it is concentrated, okay, it is two places. One is called as your Golden Crescent. Golden Crescent. Golden Crescent comprises of your Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan. This is Golden Crescent. Next is your Golden Triangle, which comprises of Myanmar. Look at this. Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. These are the drug producing regions, which is what? Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle. Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam. We can see India is not there in the list, but India suffers very badly because of drug producing regions is because of the proximity it is having with respect to Golden Crescent as well as with Golden Triangle. Because of this proximity, India is used as a hub to illegally transport. When I say hub, which means a transit route, either way, either to the west to east or east to west, it is used as a transit hub, which in turn creates the drug menace in India. So, one of the articles stated that in Gujarat of India and in Punjab, specifically this was highlighted in Punjab, drones were used to illegally smuggle drugs. So they have been using your information technology, okay, parties. So basically they are targeting certain groups and then through that they are bringing drugs into the country. How, what, etc. we'll see. What contributes to drug abuse in India? Economic and social factors. Now this might come as alarming, but mostly poor, underdeveloped regions are more prone to drug abuse. To escape the harsh realities of life, they tend to use psychotropic substances or nothing but your drugs to alleviate from the daily extremities, okay, daily pains, break through the shackles of poverty, but they are not able to, they're stuck in this cycle, they're stuck in the loop where they are not able to escape. To beat that feeling, sometimes people tend to abuse the psychotropic substances. That is first thing. Second thing is when you associate youth and social influence where it is considered as school factor to use drugs. Now if you see your media, Western media or your social networking, movies, etc., where they portray usage of drugs as cooler, or whenever they go into or slip into any sort of personal discomfort, depression, etc., they resort to drugs, which in a way sends a message: if you resort to this mental state, then you have to use drugs. And also, like mentioned, the Goa state where the police were able to nab more than 35% of drugs in the name of parties. Organized crime, because of the close proximity to both Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent, India is used as a hub to transit But the way it is masked is in such a manner, it becomes like we mentioned about your Punjab, drones are used to smuggle drugs. So it is becoming difficult to tail it and then break it. Next topic we will be discussing is US Congress passes Resolve Tibet Act. Why are we discussing this topic? That is because your US Congress has passed the promotion of Resolution to Tibet-China Dispute Act. Tibet-China Dispute Act, also known as Resolve Tibet Act. This came in current affairs, which is why we are discussing it. Where is it important for you in your UPSC? GS2, International Relations. Pretty much the entire topic that we are discussing is IR only, so it is understood. So what are the things that we will be looking through in this article? What is Resolve Tibet Act 2024? How is India's relationship with Tibet? China-Tibet issue, historical overview, what was their perspective from the beginning? Tibet and Dalai Lama's impact on India and China relations. What is the global stand on China-Tibet issue? First thing, Resolve Tibet Act of 2024, that is your US legislation was passed. Okay. A legislation was passed in the US which created something called as Resolve Tibet Act. So USA is passing a legislation in theirs for Tibet. So do you think is this the first time something like this is happening? This is the third such act which is enacted by US which deals with Tibet. Previously in 2002 they had passed Tibetan Policy Act, and in 2020 they passed Tibetan Policy and Support Act. Further down we will see what is the difference between these acts, and if they have already passed acts like this, is there something new about it in this act, or is it just the same thing? Is it just the old wine in a new bottle story? First, we will see about your Resolve Tibet Act 2024. Main objectives, why it is passed is, in simpler sense, understand this. USA is there, China is there. Yeah. Your USA wants to create a deterrence to China. China is not budging to US on anything. So there are certain key specific areas that China gets angry if you touch. One such thing is your Tibet, another thing is your Taiwan. So to deter the China, your US enacted this Tibet policy. But again, this is not a new one, this is, again I told you, third one. But there is a difference between this and the previous two legislations passed by a US for your Tibet. First, what is the objective of this? Strengthen US position in Tibet. Yes. Pressurize China, negotiate with Dalai Lama. Okay, pressurize China to hold negotiations with Dalai Lama or his representatives. And also empower US State Department officials to counter Chinese disinformation on Tibet. Another important thing is negotiations without preconditions between your China or Chinese authority and representatives of Dalai Lama. Like I told you, two more acts were passed. In both those acts, your USA claimed that Tibet belongs to China. Now in this act, it is challenging that itself. First thing, And second thing, it is forcing China to open dialogue and have negotiations without having any conditions telling you have to come back, you have to return, you shouldn't do that, because before that is how the trend they followed. But now they're telling no preconditions. This is a very, very important thing. Where compared to the previous two articles, now there is a shift from that side to this, telling no, you cannot have preconditions. Earlier the precondition means suspend your operations, you can't keep always taking political asylum in India. So there were certain preconditions in the last two act, and they were still, your USA was still adhering to the fact that Tibet comes under China. Now they're claiming that itself, they're challenging that itself. So on that aspect, the new legislation passed is not a old wine in a new bottle. This opens up a new venue of confrontation between your China and USA, or new topic or new chapter in your deterrence between your USA and China. So, like we discussed, the differences was from the 2002 Act, etc. They recognized China's claim over Tibet. Look at this. Your Tibetan plateau and your China and India. The close proximity of Tibet. Tibet shares its land border between India, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar. But if you look for Tibet, the neighbors, the two strong neighbors on each side, that is your China and India, Tibet considers India as more of a softer ally compared to the China, who is a constant aggressor and who is trying to undermine its sovereignty. If you look at Tibet's plateau, we have all the highest peaks. We have the highest peaks in the world. What am I mentioning about? Your Mount Everest. India and Tibet, since very long time, since times very, very long back, we have a huge cultural exchange. We have a very thick special bond with respect to spirituality. Again, what am I talking about? Your Buddhism. So, India and Tibet are a cultural pockets for each other. Despite the complication that India has with China, the relationship that India views with respect to Tibet is mutual, like how Tibet views. We consider them like a soft ally, where we both are like your brothers from another mother scenarios. Now, when you look at the historical perspective of Tibet, India and China, all three put in one loop. First thing is your youngest span mission in 1903 or 1904, where your British had led expedition to Tibet, okay, to counter Russian influence, which led to Lhasa Convention. Nothing but the Lhasa is the capital of Tibet. Slowly, in the Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907, both the foreign forces, that is your British and Russia, agreed to that in Tibet we will not have any particular agreement without China's interference, or without China's presence. We will not have anything to deal with Tibet, indicating that China's presence or China's control over Tibet. One of the common cultural pockets that we have with respect to our Tibet is our Buddhist monasteries, which is a strong cultural and regional religious connection we have with India and Tibet. This was true from your ancient time, medieval time, modern time, and then it will proceed in your contemporary times also. Despite, even still today, despite the altercations that we have with China and China's constant aggression over other countries, India and Tibet have tried to maintain the religious connection. It is more of considered that you can find a Tibet's Buddhism in Kashmir. What is the aggression between India and China? Constant aggression between your India and China is your land dispute. The disputed land between India and China is this region of Aksai Chin, which is occupied by China, your 1962 Indo-China War. And Arunachal Pradesh, which is again another disputed land. Arunachal Pradesh is not, when I say not disputed land, Arunachal Pradesh is complete sovereignty of India. But at the same point of time, your China has the audacity to add Arunachal Pradesh in its map and even name the regions of Arunachal Pradesh in its map. So this particular region of Arunachal Pradesh is disputed between India and China. So what is India's stand on Tibet? First and foremost, India has recognized that Tibet Autonomous Region, or what we say as TAR, is a part of People's Republic of China. We have not changed that, okay? But we have come to this conclusion post the agreement on Declaration of Principles for Relations and Comprehensive Cooperation between India and China, where we formally accept the Tibet Autonomous Region is a part of People's Republic of China. But yet, despite this, 1959 India granted asylum to Dalai Lama. Now, when you look at Tibet, the capital of Tibet is Lhasa. It was not that since the very beginning, China was the one who had authority over Tibet. It was the Dalai Lama who was having governance in this particular area. Whereas your China claims that Tibet has always been a part of China, where China claims that whatever China is trying to do to Tibet is provide autonomy and do development activities and improve it. At the same point of time, China also claims that there are certain separationist factions. By separationist factions, he is mentioning Dalai Lama. These separationist factions such as Dalai Lama are trying to separate Tibet from China when it is asking for sovereignty or independence. So, China comes down heavily on that separationist or segregationist attitude, which is why Dalai Lama had to seek asylum in India, which India provides. Because of this, there is again further confrontation between China and India on providing asylum to Dalai Lama. Your Tibet on total, it is 2.4 million square kilometers, which is almost a quarter of your Chinese land. Now, Tibet is a high elevation land. We have a lot of highest peaks, as we mentioned, your Mount Everest. Another thing is Tibet on its own, that is de facto. Tibet on its own declared independence. Tibet on its own declared independence under the 13th Dalai Lama, Tibetan Gyatso, and told that Tibet is now free. But this, as usual, will not be recognized by China. China even goes ahead to claim that the office of Dalai Lama itself, or even the selection of further Dalai Lama itself, is very controversial, because maybe then the next Dalai Lama will also try to challenge the authority and sovereignty of China, which is why China is hard on the Dalai Lama. When did the Chinese occupation in Tibet start? Up until 1912, China's occupation was not seen in Tibet. It was Dalai Lama's government which was administering the region. But whereas post 1951, when your People's Liberation Army or PLA, or in short China, entered the Tibet, it forced them to sign 17-point agreement. Now when the 17-point agreement was made to be signed by the Tibet, the Tibetan people and Tibetan authorities still claim that they were forced to sign this at pressure. According to the 17-point agreement, it states that Tibetan autonomy and religious freedom will be guaranteed, whereas the establishment of Chinese offices in Lhasa will be allowed. Initially, it started out as only establishment of Chinese offices in Lhasa, but now it went on to full-fledged occupation, such as moving your Han people into the Tibet. So influxing of people, influxing of culture, which is not what your Tibet's culture is. So Tibet is claiming that your China is doing this move just to make sure they dilute Tibet and its culture. So Tibetans go ahead to call this 17-point agreement a cultural genocide. How Tibet portrays this 17-point program is, eventually this is how the portrayal is: forced at gunpoint to sign the agreement. China tightened its control over Tibet following 1959, which resulted in lack of freedom of speech, lack of freedom of religion, press, and also Tibet has been made to undergo forced abortion, sterilization, influx of Han Chinese residents, again which is a threat to your Tibetan culture, which is the reason why they call it as cultural genocide. Now if you look at it, China claims that this Tibetan highland has been part of China from 13th century itself. So China's claim, almost if you see China's claims with respect to any country, they will always introduce all ancient things. Even if it doesn't exist, they will introduce by telling since that time this was there. The same claim is what it lays to your Aksai Chin, Arunachal Pradesh. So accordingly to China, Tibet has been part of your Chinese empire from your 13th century onwards. What is the support that Tibet receives from Western countries? Now there are certain countries like your USA, Canada, they support Tibet's move. Whereas certain other countries, see now today with the OBOR, your BRI, Belt Road Initiatives, under these things many countries are associated and they are having a good partnership, and also whether it is good partnership or not, they are having partnership with China, which makes it mandatory for them to play by China's rules. If they have to play by China's rules, which means they have to remain neutral on Tibet's issue, either they have two options: either strongly disagree for sovereignty or independence of Tibet or remain neutral. Most countries prefer to remain neutral. And also your United Nations, international organizations have been seeing a lot of human right violation being happening in Tibet. Accordingly, your Central Tibet Administration, this is something which is created like Central Tibetan Administration is there. This is by Dalai Lama, who is in exile living, has held that this is the actual Tibetan government which is carried or led by your Dalai Lama. But this Central Tibetan Administration is not recognized by any international community. Even India doesn't agree to this Central Tibetan Administration. The next topic that we will be seeing is first coal shipment from Russia to India via INSTC. Now look at this. This international north-south transport corridor, whatever is there, the path, the new path, initially before this international north-south transport corridor came into picture, the way goods were bought from Russia or any Central Asian country to India was this. This was the conventional route. Look at this. This was the conventional route how it would come to India. But now with the development of north-south transport corridor, it can come directly from here to here, which reduces the timeline by 20 days, and the cost, the shipping costs, etc., is reduced by 30%. This is with respect to financials, but we have much more other benefits, that is entry into Central Asian markets. Second thing, one of the main things that is the objective of this is, we were able to get the goods to India by bypassing its usual trade route of Afghanistan and Pakistan. So we could avoid entering into Pakistan and Afghanistan to get the goods from Russia to India. It's one of a very important thing about your INSTC. So why are we looking at this topic? Russia has sent 2 trains carrying coal to India. How has it sent? International North-South Transport Corridor. The consignment will travel over 7,200 kilometers from St. Petersburg, Russia to Mumbai in India. Relevance, international relations. What all we will be seeing in this article? What is International North-South Transport Corridor? What is the significance of this corridor for India? And what are the challenges related to the North-South corridor? Now, with this North-South transport corridor, like I mentioned, this is the standard route, which was how it used to come to India. But now we are getting the access to the markets of Russia as well as Central Asia, okay, by bypassing Afghanistan and Pakistan. Afghanistan, again, Taliban controlled. It is very, what is the right word you could use is unstable. You cannot just predict, my relationship with Afghanistan is going to be like this. Again, no mistake of Afghanistan because of all the global wars and etc. So, coming back to it, it makes the region very unstable. Pakistan, though, you know the relationship. And one more, especially in the present climatic condition, this proves extremely useful for us is because we are diverting the path of coming from your Mediterranean Sea. Why Mediterranean Sea? Now all the majority wars, whatever is happening in the world, where do you think it is focused under? Your Mediterranean Sea, Syria, Israel, Hamas, Lebanon, Jordan, your Hamas war, your Hezbollah war, now again Syria fleeing, Turkey in the picture. All of this is here only. And when our freight or our container or our goods comes in, it poses a security threat. If this wouldn't have been there as an alternative, then we had to rely on this only. For example, your Houthis, I don't know how much issues it caused with respect to your security issues, etc. So this cannot have come at a more better time than now. So this is a 7,200 long kilometers multimodal transit, which means railways, ship, roadways, airways, all of it multimodal means you will include all versions of transit. It links the Indian Ocean to the Persian Gulf, Caspian Sea, Iran, and extends to your northern Europe through St. Petersburg. It integrates shipping, rail, road networks. Majorly it connects cargo movement, your INSTC. What is it about? If you have to tell in one line, it is nothing but the cargo movement between India, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, Central Asia and Europe. Understanding? Your international north-south transport corridor initially was set out when it began as a trilateral agreement between Russia, Iran and India in the year 2000. You have to remember that, that is very important. What are the different corridors or the modes of transportation which we see? Central corridor, Western corridor, Eastern corridor. What is the significance of INSTC for India? Like we discussed, look at this, it bypasses the Red Sea. We don't have to rely excessively on only Red Sea, Mediterranean, Gulf of Aden, these junctions. Look at this, Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea. These junctions right now in present day political climate are so volatile that it might threaten the security of your goods. In fact, it will become a point of debate and discussion where they can hold you viable to do things which you don't want. So that is what we discussed in the form of trade security. This providing alternate route now in current political climate has been a godsend for us. One of the main thing is it bypasses Pakistan and Afghanistan. It gives us market connectivity into your European countries, Russia and also Central Asian countries. It has cut down the transit by 20 days, the cost involved in the transit by 30%. It also gives us the energy access or market access into energy market. It will also open up channels for strategic investment in the Central Asian countries. But there are certain challenges, which is why we have not been able to fully, or which we may not be able to fully reach the potential of INSTC. What is that? Financial funding. For example, if you see with respect to your OBOR or Belt Road initiatives, you have major funding provided there. Your China is acting as a major provider, and also you have international organizations such as your World Bank, etc., coming in to provide the funding. Whereas when you see for INSTC, you do not have any such major institutional back-end supporting. And your JCPOA, that is your sanctions against Iran, your JCPOA, USA withdrew from this which means the way we are able to avert Pakistan and Afghanistan is through entry into your, for example, Chabar port, Iran development, all these things. But constantly Iran is burdened with sanctions. Sanctions from USA. The burdening was or unburdening was happening with respect to your JCPOA, and US withdrew, which mean again constant sanctions on Iran. Iran again there is huge amount of domestic turmoil they have to face. And also the security threats. Now when we say non-state actors are coming into pictures, for example your Houthis, Hamas, now Hezbollah. So there is an issue for our freight, cargo, etc. Infrastructure development, again the same issue with respect to no major institutions backing, and lack of coordination among the organizational members. We'll move ahead to the next topic, importance of Quad and BRICS. Give me a minute. Importance of Quad and BRICS. In simpler terms, Quad and BRICS are organization in which India is a founding member. What is the reason we are looking into this? Quad foreign ministers meeting in Japan at the end of July. Ongoing violation of international law in the Ukrainian war. Israeli assault on Gaza. For this and Quad BRICS, what is the relationship? We will see. Where is the relevance of it? In GS2, again specifically, India neighborhood relations, bilateral relations, global groupings, agreements which involves India and India's interests. A possible mains question from this topic is, with India being the only country, look at this, with India being the only country common to both Quad and BRICS, as a founding member of both, it cannot afford to downplay one for the other. This is true in real politic or geopolitic, whatever is happening right now. Your Quad is a grouping of 4 countries. Which are those countries? India, Japan, Australia, USA. When they started out to address the geopolitical security concerns regarding China, to counter terrorism and bring peace and stability in your Indo-Pacific region. This was the ideal they started with, or in simpler terms, they were to act as the counterweight to your China measure. So Quad is a grouping of 4 countries. Main thing is reorienting global supply chains for critical technologies. That is one of the things that they discussed in the present Quad ministerial meeting. To counterweight another, see for example, we were speaking something about Quad, we were speaking about BRICS, then suddenly there is something called as AUKUS. Listen, first and foremost, no matter what names you keep, Quad was initiated for one main reason, as a counterweight for your China. And as it states, to give or to bring peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. The same objective is also held as, or is also tried to be fulfilled by one other organization in the same block, that is your Indo-Pacific block, that is your AUKUS. AUKUS is nothing but Australia, UK, US. It is a grouping of these three countries where they will enhance their military capability, especially Australia's nuclear submarine capacity, and they will provide security to the Indo-Pacific region and deterrence of China. Almost similar to somewhere of your Quad. Yes. But just these two outright we are not claiming. Enhancing military capabilities and nuclear submarine. This is your AUKUS. Constantly, one of the adjectives that people are trying to use for your Quad is, it is the Eastern Alliance or Asian NATO is what they have been calling it. The criticism for your Quad is. Whereas, Ministry of External Affairs has constantly having to be in remind that Quad is not an Asian NATO. We are not a military. Okay, that is one difference between your AUKUS and your Quad. We are not outrightly calling we are a military organization where we are there only to fight China. But rather India views Quad in a position such as it is there for the stability, regional development, and at the same point of time bring peace to the Indo-Pacific area. One thing that your Quad who are the major players? I told you, India, Japan, Australia, USA. Despite being in Quad, it does, that is India does some things which are against or straight contrasting to Quad. One such thing is your BRICS. Meaning what? Close association with Russia and also advocating for diplomatic solution in Ukraine. This is not very much happily received from your Western counterparts. But still India goes ahead and does it. So this stance is coming very apt now. Quad is not an Asian NATO. India's enthusiastic engagement with Quad also contrasts its involvement with BRICS. Why? What is the whole point of Quad? Counterweight or a deterrence to China. Now India is also a part of something which is very large and which involves China. That is your BRICS. What is your BRICS? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Isn't it quite contrasting to Quad? You tell you're going to be a deterrence to China and then you're going to partner with China and create something called BRICS. One of the main issue with BRICS was India was somewhere the same difficulty that others are facing is what India also faced with respect to Quad and your BRICS. It is eager with Quad, but at the same point of time, it has to be equally eager with BRICS, but it cannot be lukewarm, which means it cannot be like I'm half in, half out kind of thing. So, which means engagement with BRICS has to be there. This is a regional power. At the same point of time, BRICS, especially under your China's leadership, wants to increase the membership. Whereas India is very reluctant about it. Initially, Russia was also reluctant about it, but post your NATO, that is NATO membership, your Ukraine asking, Ukraine war, Western allies, etc. Post that, your Russia has taken a different stance where it supports Chinese stance and wants to use BRICS to push back the West. So look at this, India is part of an organization Quad where it wants to pose a counterweight to China. There is again something called as BRICS, which your countries like China and Russia are trying to use to push back West. And India is founding members for both. Now we understand why it is important to understand what India's stance is. One major thing when it comes to your BRICS and Quad, India's engagement with BRICS has to be there. It cannot be in half out. It is very important now more than ever. See, for example, you would have seen with respect to BRICS recent meeting where they are trying to move towards de-dollarization. This is important for India's development and growth. So India cannot be in a half and half scenario or with respect to your BRICS or with respect to your Quad. So we've reached the end of the content. We will meet in the next live. If you do understand our content, if you're happy with our content, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and share it along with your friends. Thank you.